So guys, we are starting in next 2 minutes. Okay, so that's why no one can hear anything. So let's wait for 2 more minutes. So people are still joining. Then we will start the webinar. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining the webinar. So before we start the session, let me tell you some of the ground rules of this webinar. So you all will be on mute mode during the session. You will be unmuted for the question and answer round after the session. In case somebody wants to ask the question in between of the session, you have the option for typing your question in the chat box. This webinar is recorded. So after the session, we will share the recording with you and it will also be available on our YouTube channel. So my name is Prekhar Omar and I am the marketing consultant for DevLabs Alliance. So now, before we start, I want to give you a quick introduction about the DevLabs Alliance and what we do. So DevLabs Alliance is basically a leading provider of technical training and consulting services. So when I say technical training, here I will be naming some of our top trending training courses and workshops. So the first one is SDAT and automation, robotics and process automation, data science and machine learning, DevOps, blockchain, performance testing, and soft skills also. So we have presence across various continents like Asia, Canada, US, and all. We are having very rich pool of IT professional, consultant, and advisor in the respective segment. For more information, you can visit our website for more information. So coming to the DevLabs, so why you should choose us? So there are the major reasons why you should choose us. First one is practical workshop with zero theory. Our sessions are completely hands-on with use case and assignment oriented. Second, we have limited batch size so that you get focused attention. Our trainer are subject expert and having real-time industry expert with latest course curriculum. Our course curriculum is assigned as per the industry expand in the start. So there is an on-spot offer going on, which I will be sharing. So my team will be sharing a link with you on the chat window where we are offering a special 10% discount on the course fees. Our team will share the link and the coupon code for the same. So here you can see the course detail on my screen. So our next batch is starting from the 21st of September, which are having 10 weeks of program. So our trainers in this batch will be real-time industry experience that will be having experience of 12 plus year in the same field. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over the presentation to our trainer that will be having a 10 plus years of QA and automation experience. So over to you. Thank you. You can take now control as us.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So before sharing my screen, actually getting started, I'll just quickly give my introduction. So hello everyone. My name is Ayaz Hassan. I'm associated with DevLabs since a couple of months. Other than that, I'm having a rich experience around 10 years in the field of test automation. I have worked for multiple multinational companies across the geographical areas. I was based in Canada for 4 years. I was in USA. I got the chance to visit to South Africa as well. As of now, I'm based in India. So uh, let me quickly share my screen. Then we'll talk about uh, the uh, our agenda, that is uh, learning the APIs. Uh, so let me quickly share my screen. So we're gonna talk about web services testing today, and web services testing can be done in many ways, but we're gonna talk about the rest assured automation. So I'll quickly start with what exactly we're gonna talk about, what would be the table of content. So let me do quickly in presentation mode. Okay, all right. So here what we are talking about, we will be talking about today some basic concept of APIs, uh, then web services. So I mean, we're gonna focus on REST assured. So we're gonna talk about its architecture. We're gonna talk about the tools that can be used to automate to test the uh, REST web services. So other than that, we're gonna pick one tool and we're gonna see how to install that tool in our machine. We're gonna do basic stuff like we're gonna hit a couple of web services and we're gonna see what exactly we are getting as a response. So that would be the part of a demo. Other than that, we're gonna talk about the API automation framework as well, the ideal API automation framework that we develop. So yeah, so this is what we're gonna talk about today. Uh, so we'll start with the basic what what is API and what is why do we need API, the first thing, and why do we need API kind of testing? What would be the advantage of API testing over GUI? So I'll try to cover those things in the introduction part only. So we have to understand a couple of things before uh, going to start about API testing. I'm not sure if you guys have the background of web services, API, manual testing, or any kind of testing, but I'm assuming that you guys uh, are not having the background and any kind of thing. So I'll just keep that as a zero. So we have to understand couple of things before we gonna proceed to couple of terminology that I am going to use. So first terminology would be the API. In between, I will be calling these API as a web services as well. So we have to understand what is the difference between web service and API. Uh, then we're gonna talk about if we have application, how to know that. where is API, where is GUI and other stuff, right? Then we're gonna talk about type of web services. So yeah, so API stands for application programming interface. So if I say application programming interface, we have to understand. Uh, let's try to understand the architecture. Then maybe I can tell you guys what is the difference between API and web services and why we focus these days a lot about web services or API. Okay, so if I say API or web service, just refer to the same thing. I mean, for now you can consider the synonyms, but once I'll explain the difference, then you can understand. Okay, so any application that we have, uh, so we see couple of things and we don't see couple of things that are running in backend. So if I give you one real-time example, and that example I will uh, have throughout my session. So here is one example. So you can consider any flight booking site. Uh, so if you are in India, we have number of portals, a number of global portals are also available. So for example, we have GoIbibo, right? So if I have to book my ticket, what I need to do is I need to go into goibibo.com. I need to search that I want to book a flight from Delhi to Mumbai, and that will be tomorrow, right? So if I search, it gives me the list of the flights, right? So this is what I'm saying, that is a GUI layer, which is called presentation layer. You can say user interface layer, right? And this layer is developed using multiple technologies like the HTML, CSS, whatever is used to develop and display that page in front of you. But in backend, there are some other layer that we have that is called API layer. And that layer is not visible to us, directly not visible. If we want to see, we can see that, but directly it is not visible to end user, right? So uh, if I go to goibibo.com and I search a flight from Delhi to Mumbai tomorrow at any time, so I can get the list of the web services. Sorry, list of the flights, right? And all those stuff, timings, duration, what is the price, and other stuff. The service provider, like if it is Air India, Air, whatever the airlines we have, so it will have all those information, right? So we have to understand that that information is uh, the information that we are seeing is displayed on the screen or the HTML page is due to the application interface layer, which is API layer. So that is due to that, and we don't see that thing uh, in our application. And that layer is calling another system or another thing that is called application database. So here any application have three layers. I would say first is the GUI layer, which we see on the screen. Another one is the inter. You can consider that as a bridge or connection. That layer is called API layer, and we have database, right? So let's try to understand with the example. For example, there is Air India, and Air India runs five flights from Delhi to Mumbai in a given day, and that information is stored in a particular database. Obviously, there would be some database, there would be some tables. Tables will have some columns like flight number, other stuff like the price and other stuff, right? And that is stored in a database. If we have to fetch that information, obviously we need something that can fetch that information, or that can be kind of solution that can be developed and that provided to some third party tool, right? So you have to understand in such a way, like if you go into goibibo.com, you search the flight, you will get the same list of the flights. Price might be different due to the discount and other stuff, but you're gonna see same number of flights. If you go to the official website of Air India and you search the flight from Delhi to Mumbai for tomorrow, you're gonna see same number of flights. If you go to some other portal like Agoda or some other portal and you search the flight, especially for Air India, you're gonna see same number of flights. So it means that there is something which is being shared across all the platforms, and that's why they are getting same information, right? And that is called API. So what they did, they create API, and that API is being shared across all the portals. Whoever is associated, they share that portal, the web service, and they call those web services, and that information is displayed on their website. So here we have to understand couple of things. If I go to Google, I search goibibo.com, it displays the goibibo. Once I search from flight from Delhi to Mumbai, what it does, it hits that API. So it might be possible that it hit the API. If we just put the filter for example Air India, it hit that API, Air India API, and it will, that API is further interacting with database and fetching the results and displaying on the screen. So that's what happening for all the application that we have. So this is kind of the working architecture, you can say. Uh, if we have a application and that involves GUI, API, and database, so this is how it is interacting. We have some GUI layer, then GUI layer interacts with API layer, and that API layer is further interacting with a database with using some queries, right? We can directly interact from GUI to uh, database. That is also possible, and some application and is doing that as well. But if you need something, for example, you have seen that multiple application is having map on the on their application. For example, if you are booking some uh, you use some cab application like Uber, Ola, and other stuff. So they have map, right? So you use that map. So that map is coming from Google. So it means that Google has created some solution and provided to them, and they are using that solution. That is called kind of API that they have created for map, and they have shared, and that API is being used to uh, do the mapping. Other than map, like we have some other example. If you can think like, for example, uh, you can see on different portal, you see that there are some YouTube links, right? Uh, you can see, especially on news portal, if you go and you can see that there is live streaming going on YouTube, and that link is displaying, or that video is displaying, YouTube video is displaying on the screen. So it means that YouTube has created API and has given to, and that API is being used to display that content. Similarly, you can see that Twitter tweets are uh, available on the bottom section of multiple applications. Similarly, you can see the Instagram uh, uh, post, you can see the Facebook post. So most of the companies has created their web services. Some of them has put it as a open, so anyone can use it and just integrate it with their application and use that. Some are not open, some are private, but you can pay and you can use those services as well. So this is what the architecture you can consider for a typical application which has GUI, API, and database. and this is something we have to understand. Uh, from here, you can understand the importance of API, because it is quite possible that some application don't have the API, but some application has the API. If your application has the API, you have to understand uh, how important that API is and why should test the API before the GUI. That is again a point. And what would be the benefit if you cover most of the scenario through the API as compared to GUI. So we have other advantage, you can say, other stuff you can say. So I'll move to the next slide, and let's talk about benefit of API testing. If you have application where you have GUI, API, and database, so and you got the chance to uh, test that application, and your leadership asks you that, hey, can you please create a test plan, or can you please create a strategy to do the testing for this application. And for example, you are starting from scratch, so you have to think those parameters before starting your testing, before making any plan, before making any strategy. So we call that uh, that thing is kind of test strategy. When we make a test strategy for any application, we think from couple of points. The first point is the cost. So obviously, everything is dependent on the cost. So I mean, we should save the money. Obviously, whatever the test we have, it should accurate, it should fast, it required less maintenance. Obviously, so during these kind of uh, strategy, we have to think on these parameters. So why API testing is more important as compared to GUI, and why should we actually focus more on the API as compared to GUI? So the the I must sure that some of you are already working in IT fields in different uh, domain or areas. So you must have the idea how an application is being developed from the scratch. I'm not talking about a small application. I'm talking about a big project. So I will also talk about how an application is developed and which layer is developed first. So the first layer which is developed is a database layer. So we are we start with database, then we start with API layer. The last layer that is being developed is GUI, graphical user interface layer. So if you are aligned in a project uh, where you have to work with the developer, and you have your role is to test that application either uh, uh, using any tool or manually or any medium, and the developer is uh, in a phase to just start the project, right? So what will you do? So if you are planning to start with GUI, then GUI will be available at the end of the second layer, which is the API layer. So in today's world, we usually do the in sprint automation or in sprint testing, or we can say that we testing will start right from the requirement gathering. So we start our testing all together with the developer. So what the developer is doing, they are creating the schemas, they are creating the database structure, they ready the database, they ready the data, and they create the web services. So we start the testing of those web services. So, for example, one web service got uh, created, for example, for login or for registration. So we start testing that those web services, and once all web services are developed, they start the GUI, and those web services are integrated to those GUI. So this is how application uh, development life cycle is start from database to API layer to GUI layer. The similar in same way we start our testing, like we start with database, then API layer, and then GUI layer. So I mean, what is the advantage of doing API testing? The first advantage is whatever the API the developer gonna create, these are not dependent on any kind of language. For example, uh, in your organization, in your company, it has decided that they're gonna use MySQL database, they're gonna use Angular JS for uh, JavaScript, Angular JS, and PHP as a programming language for GUI, right? And for API, we don't have to dependent on any kind of language. API can be developed using any programming language. You can develop the API using Java. You can develop the API using C Sharp. You can develop the API using uh, Perl, Ruby, Python, any kind of programming language. But the API that will be developed can be used or integrated on or accessed by any kind of programming language. So it is not language dependent. So it is language independent. So if you have web service, for example, if you have Google Map web service, I'm not, and I don't know which language they have used to develop that Google Map, or a Twitter tweets, or Instagram post, right? So I'm not sure, but I can use any programming language to test that web service. I can use Postman as a tool to test that web service, and Postman is using JavaScript. I can use uh, Playwright, which is using JavaScript or TypeScript. I can use SOAP UI, that is you using some other language. So it is language independent. So if it is language independent, it means that whatever the language you are comfortable, you can use that language to test that web services. So you don't have to learn that particular language to do the API testing. The other thing is, I'll talk about the maintenance, which is not here in the slide. So I mean, if a web service is developed, it has very rare chance that those web services will be modified or enhanced very frequently, right? So I mean, so obviously whatever the test cases you will write to test those web services are gonna be intact. So it means that you don't need much maintenance to do for those web services or APIs or operations that web service has, right? So if we have less maintenance as compared to GUI, in GUI most of the if you guys are in testing, you are facing the problem that if you have automated your application using Selenium or any other tool, so obviously every tool is based on the some recognition system, like identification technique, right? So I mean, Selenium and other stuff is using DOM to identify the elements. You create the locator objects to identify, and it is very common that those locators objects is getting changed over the period of time. If a developer develop new feature, they change the HTML, they change the CSS, they change the JavaScript, and it might be possible they change the application flow as well. They introduce some other forms, they change the forms. So due to those changes, you have to keep updating your object repository, your locators. Maybe you have to add some other flows. So that requires a lot of maintenance. But here in case of web services, once web services are developed, it is very rare that those gonna be modified or enhanced or changed over the period of time. It might be possible they upgrade the version, and that is not very frequent. It is very rare. So if you have less maintenance, obviously you're gonna save the cost, definitely, because in today's world, in reality, in automation, it is around 60% maintenance is required for your automation, and that is very much. If you are investing 60% of the time to just keep those repositories or the locator maintained, that is a very huge number, right? So if you are covering those functionality using the web services, then why should you gonna for the GUI, right? So it will save the cost. Obviously, it will save the time as well if it has less maintenance. Then obviously, if time and cost is getting saved, uh, then obviously you're gonna save a lot. I mean, if we talk about the return of investment of your automation, that will be huge, right? Other than that, you can do enhance coverage as well. So, for example, if I just consider that whatever the functionality we have for that application, and that functionality is having the web services for those as well, then it is always recommended to test that functionality from the API, not GUI. For example, one application is having the functionality of login, register, search, and I'm just taking the same example, flight booking, right? So I can log in, I can register, I can search the flight, I can book the flight. So if those web services are already available, then it is recommended that you just test through the web services. And if web services is up and running, it means that it will be it will be working on the GUI as well. So you can do 100% coverage using the API for sure. Other than that, it is faster. So I mean that advantage is not here, but web services testing is always faster. For example, you have one application, and I mean you have 500, 600 graphical user interface UI test cases, and you have to run those test cases daily, and those test cases are executed in CI/CD pipeline or Jenkins or daily, or maybe if you have release and you have to make sure that all test cases are passed before going the code into production, and that window is not very huge. I mean, you have to complete everything in 2 or 3 hours, right? And you have to run 500 test cases. So what is the solution? Solution is you have to do the parallel testing, or you have to add more resources to this do the stuff. But it is very common that you in one go 500 test cases will not be passed. It might be 200, 300 test cases is passing, 50 test cases is having issues, 100 test cases are getting skipped. We have some flaky test cases as well. So that is the big challenge. Like if you have to complete the testing within a timeline, that is a big challenge, right? So if you have web services, that can be very fast. I mean, if you have to do the login from GUI, it's gonna take, for example, 1 minute. If you are hitting the web services, simple web service, and do the post operation, it's gonna take only 30 seconds or 1 minute. So you're gonna save a lot of time if you are doing the API testing as compared to GUI. So these are some benefits I would say uh, over the GUI, but obviously you cannot compare the GUI testing with API testing from my point of view, uh, because I mean GUI has some other issues as well, some alignment issues, some responsive issues. Application is not opening properly in mobile. while it is okay with the desktop version, right? So those kind of testing is required definitely, but the main functionality that can be tested through the API. So obviously we have the requirement for GUI definitely, for sure, where we have API and GUI both. But I mean, if we have 100% API coverage, then obviously we can do other stuff. We can do cross-browser testing. We can do uh, responsive testing, graphical user interface testing for those applications. So that will be uh, done. So yeah, obviously, if you if someone asks you what is what is your approach to do the testing for a application which is getting started from the scratch, and you got the chance to create the test plan or test strategy, and that application is having GUI, API, database, everything. So you have to think from these points that whatever the testing we are doing, that should be accurate, that should be cost effective, that should be uh, taking less time, less maintenance. So those stuff you have to think. So this is what the advantage we have from API testing. I mean, as compared to, you can compare with GUI for sure. Let's move to the next slide. Let me see. So I mean, we have to understand the API thing, and how you do the raise the request, how it is responded, how you are getting the information. So this is a simple diagram where you can see that. Uh, so it is for not for only API, it is for GUI as well. So if you go into, for example, Google, right, and you type Java, for example, you type Java. So what will happen? It will send a request to Google server that, I mean, client means my browser or myself is asking for some information which is available in your database or on your server, should display on my system. So similarly for API as well. So if you type Java in your Google and you search, you get number of links, right? You get Java tutorial, you get Java download, you get official website of Java, which is Oracle. You get number of links, right? So similarly, if you have some web service, um, as I have already given the example, like you have to search the flight, and you search the flight, for example, and you give the keywords from and to and date. These are three parameters, I would say, or the keyword, I would say. So you give the keyword, it hit that API, it will make a request, and that request will be, if I'm just getting the information, right, that will be get information. It will make the information in any form. It could be JSON or it could be any form, and that request will go into server, and server will response in form of HTTP, and that HTTP information is displayed, and that response you can display in any form on your screen, right? So if you send a request, request will go in some form to the server, server will response back in any form, and that is display on your screen or your console or whatever the place you are just displaying that information, right? So it is very straightforward, and we are talking about here the rest assured. So I mean, we will make the request in JSON form, and it will give the response in HTTP response. So request will be in JSON form, response will be some HTTP, and we can use some HTTP methods like get, post, put, delete, and we have patch as well. So we're going to talk about those. methods as well. So this is typical client server architecture, and this is how one web service is working or API is working. So the thing which is left is we have to understand the difference uh, between web service and API. Okay, so I mean this is very important, and if you are going for the interview as well, so the very basic interview question that people usually ask is what do you understand by web service and what do you understand by uh, API. So this is very famous interview question as well. So you have to answer that question. I mean, some people are always confused. They consider API and web service both are same. Some people think that it has the difference, but it has very slight difference if you see that. So uh, web service is the parent of API. So if I say web service, it has everything. It includes API, it includes other stuff as well. And API is very specific. So I mean, don't get confused with web service or API. So web service basically is a collection of protocol standards that we have, and which also contains the APIs and other stuff as well. So this is the basic difference between web service and API, but in daily life we usually refer both the things same. So I'll give one example where I will be hitting a web service. After this PPT, I'll just make you guys understand how to identify this is the API and what are the this is the service this application has and what are the other things that we are having. So moving to the next slide, we have to talk about what are the tools available in market to test the APIs or web services. So I mean the most famous tool. So we are talking about REST services. So we have two kind of services. One is REST and one is SOAP, right? And uh, I hope you guys have the understanding of what is REST and what is SOAP. So basically, web services are we have two kind of API or web services. You can say one is REST, one is SOAP. So I mean the SOAP is the oldest uh, kind of web service, and SOAP is the latest one. SOAP has its own advantage over REST. That's why SOAP is REST is very popular. And these days, most of the web services are being developed only in the REST. People are avoiding using SOAP because it has some restriction. It has some uh, limitation. That's why most of the folks are developing REST web services, and I mean Google, Facebook, most of the services they have, most of the services are the REST only. Very old projects which are already developed few years back, and it is very complex or it is very time taking to migrate from SOAP to REST. Those are still uh, available in SOAP, but I mean multiple projects are migrating. I was working on one project where they are migrating from uh, SOAP to REST because of the uh, the thing that they want to achieve, which is not possible with the SOAP. So I mean, in today's uh, industry, like we have number of tools to test it. I mean, I can name it more than 20 automation tools that can be used to test API. The most famous and very old tool is Postman, and which is very common. If you don't know programming, if you know nothing, you can use Postman. It is very easy. You can hit the web service, you can get the response, you can understand if it is up and running or not. You can get all those information using Postman. The second most famous and old tool is SOAP UI. So don't get confused with the name. It has the SOAP UI. Uh, so it tests the SOAP web services. No, it can test SOAP and REST both. Then we have REST assured. So REST assured is not a tool. So don't get confused that this is kind of tool or framework. This is a kind of uh, jar, or you can say kind of API or library uh, that is available to do the testing for REST services. Okay, so REST assured is not a tool, not a framework. It is a library that can be used to automate to test the REST web services. Okay, so these are the very old tool, but nowadays we have next gen automation tools like uh, you yeah, I hope you guys have heard about. We have Cypress, we have Playwright. So these are next gen automation tool. Cypress, Playwright, Jest. Uh, so I mean WebDriver IO. So these are very famous these days, and it is very easy to do the stuff. There is one more very famous and a good tool that we have is karate framework. So we have karate as well, which is very famous to do the API stuff, API automation, number of things. So yeah, so we have more than 20-50 tools to do the stuff. I mean, these all are freeware. Other than that, we can have 30-50 license tool as well to do the API automation. Yeah, so these three are very famous. Then we have next gen tool as well, like karate, uh, Cypress, WebDriver IO. Then we have uh, Playwright. So these are other tools that can be used based on your interest, based on your expertise. Like if you good in JavaScript, you can go with some tools. If you are good in Groovy, you can go with SoapUI. If you are good in Java, right, and you don't want to learn any other programming language, you can go with REST assured, or you can go with the karate framework. If you are working in BDD, behavior driven development, or Cucumber, and you think that I should have something which is based on Cucumber only, so you can go with karate framework, or you can go some other tools that use BDD. So yeah, so you have number of choices, you have number of options to do that stuff. Number of tools are available, so you can search, you can do some research for the tools available. So let's talk about some of the methods that HTTP has, and these methods are common for even for SOAP and REST both. So we're going to talk about those methods like get, post, put, patch, and delete. So I mean, these are very common method that we gonna talk about. So so with the name, we can understand that what this method will be doing. So if you have to just select something, just get something, so we can use get. For example, I need the list of uh, I need the list of the I have one library, right? And I need the list of the books. So I can say that I need all the list of books. So I can use get. Or I need the detail of particular book. I know the author, or I know, for example, if I have to find the book from a particular author, so I can use this get method, right? Then we have put patch and delete as well. So if you have to uh, insert something, right? For example, I have to do the registration on a form, right? And I'm a new user in application and I have to do the registration. You guys used to do that, right? So I can do that. So for that, I have to insert the data. I have to send the data, right? So I can do with the post. I mean, it gonna ask me my first name, last name, email ID, my password. It will ask me re-enter my password. Then it gonna ask me date of birth. It asks me my phone number. So these information I need to insert into some database or somewhere or some particular thing so that I can use the post, right? So get and post are very easy and it is very common, and delete is also very common. For example, I have one library, right? And I have inserted one book detail. For example, I said that book ID is 123, book author is myself Ayaz, and book name is API automation, right? I inserted that book detail. I want to delete. By mistake, I inserted. I think like that information is not correct. I can delete that information. So get, post, and put. So sorry, delete is very common. It is very the question when you go for interview and when you are working on a project, you confuse with put and patch. So you have to understand the difference between post, put, and patch. Get is very easy. Delete is very easy. Okay, delete is very easy. We have to understand post, put, and patch. So I mean, just try to understand in this way. Uh, for post, I mean, if I'm sending the data without any identifier, then what will happen? It will store the data and generate or assign a new identifier. Okay. So for example, if I'm doing registration and there is no identifier, what will happen? It will assign one identifier. If I again send the same data, for example, if I again do the same stuff, then it will store the data and assign the new identifier. Means that if I enter a book and I again enter that book using the post method. So what will happen? And I'm in both the cases, I'm not giving any identifier. So what will happen? It will create first time it will create an identifier and it will assign the identifier. The second time it will create another identifier and assign another identifier. It means that duplicates are allowed, but internally it differentiate with the identifier in the post. But if you are doing put, now if I send the data with an identifier, so what will happen? It will check that this identifier is already available. If it is available, then it will update that information that this data is coming for that identifier and just update that information. If that identifier is not available, it will insert the data and assign that particular identifier. So here we have to understand the difference between post and put in such a way that for post, if you insert something and that doesn't have identifier, so it will assign that identifier. That's it. If it is having the identifier, that's okay. If you again insert the data without identifier, if you are inserting with the identifier, it's fine. I mean, it has both different identifier, right? If it is not, what will do? It will insert the data, but it will put some identifier to differentiate initially. Duplicate it. It is duplicate. That's fine, but it will identify with the identifier if you are doing the post. But if you are doing the put, in put, it will say that I need the identifier to check. It will check this identifier is already available, just update the existing data. If it is not available, it means it is new entry. So what will happen? It will consider that as a new entry. So here, if you have to update something in general, so you have to use put. Update the data. For example, I have inserted a book detail and I think that I was the author, but I think I missed the other author as well, right? So I can just update that in particular information. But if I think that my entry is new, I don't have the existing data, I want to make new entry, I can do the post. So here there is a small difference you have to understand between post and put. Post is used for new entry, put is used for the updation. It means you already have the entry and you want to do the update. You want to do the update. Okay. Now we need to understand what is patch. What is patch? Now, if I send the data with an identifier, then it will check if that identifier exists. And if identifier exists, we will update the resource with the data. And if it is not, then it will create a resource with the data and assign new identifier. Okay. So I'm just repeating what will happen in case of patch. If the if I send the data with an identifier, then it will check if that particular identifier exists or no. Okay. So if that particular identifier exists, so what will happen? It will update the resource with data. If it is not available, right, then it gonna throw the exception. So here we have to understand that patch is also used for updation. Patch is also used for updation. Put is also used for updation. But here put will consider if that identifier is not available, it will consider that entry as a new entry. So let me repeat again, but difference between post and put and patch. So what will happen in post? If I send any data with an identifier, I again send that same data with that identifier, it will store that information because both the identifier are different, duplicates will be allowed. That's okay. If I send the data without identifier in post, by default it will assign some identifier. If I send again data without identifier, same data will be stored, but it will assign another identifier. So it means it will always consider that entry as a new entry. Always that entry will be new entry. In case of put, what will happen? In case of put, if we insert the data with an identifier, it will check that that identifier is already exist. If it is exist, it will update that data. If that identifier is not available, it will insert the data and it will assign that a new identifier to that data. Okay. In patch, what will happen if you insert a data with particular identifier, it will check if that identifier exists. Okay, it exists. Update that entry. If that identifier doesn't exist, what it gonna say? It gonna throw the error. It will say some exception. It will throw some exception. So if you have to do the updates only, you don't want that any other operation to be happen. I just want to do the update. So you have to use patch. But if you want to update and if the data is not available, you just want to make sure that that should be inserted, you can do the put as well. But if you just want to insert that entry and it should be considered as a new entry, you can do the post as well. So this is the difference between post, put and patch, and this is very common question as well. When you go for interview, the interviewer can ask, can you tell me the difference between put put patch and post? And most of the people are confused with this put, post and patch. So hope it is clear. If not, then you guys can ask the question in the last section, which is Q&A. So moving to the next, obviously, uh, I mean, there are some HTTP status codes that we have. So those status codes are like predefined, and we have to remember those status code. So I mean, the code which start from 100 to 199 is fall under the category of information between 100 to 199. Between 200 to 299, that is fall under the success category. The code which falls between 300 to 399 is a redirection. The code that fall between the category to 400, from 400 to 499 will be client error, and the response code which fall under the category of 500 to 599 will be server side error. So you have to just remember this range. From 1 to 199 it will be information, 2 to 299 it will be success, 3 to 399 is redirection, 4 to 499 will be client side, 5 to 59 will be server side, and couple of things, couple of particular number. For example, you get 200, it means okay. You get 202, which is accepted. Then you get 400, bad request. You get 404, page not found. We usually get that 404, right? Or we get 40 or 401, unauthorized. Similarly, we get 500, 501. So similar response code we get. So these are very important when we are doing API testing. Like we need to validate these responses, that hey, these are the responses we are getting, and we should put some validation that my web service, if my web service is up and running, it should return 200, right? If my web service is not up and running, it should return 400, 404, 403, this kind of thing. If it is client side, if it is server side, it is throwing the error, then it will be 500 or these things. So we have to remember these response codes that we use, and this is very helpful for validation. When we are doing the validation for our responses, then we use those numbers. Okay. Okay, moving to the next, We'll talk about installation of REST assured. So for that, as I told you that REST assured is a library which comes in form of jar, and that is Java library. So we're gonna talk about Java. We're gonna talk about Java editor, which is Eclipse. We're gonna talk about Maven. So if you guys know about Maven, Maven is a uh, you can say project management tool, uh, repository management tool, or dependency management tool. So we're gonna use Maven. Uh, we're gonna use unit testing framework for Java, which is TestNG. We can use JUnit as well, but here we're gonna talk about TestNG, and we're gonna talk about sample code. We will try to hit some of the web services, and we're gonna do those stuff. Okay, so this is what we'll do as part of demo. Then we will talk about what is Pojo classes, uh, how to convert Pojo to JSON, how to convert Pojo to XML or HTML, how to convert XML to Pojo. Okay, so I mean, let's talk about Pojo. So I mean, you guys, I'm assuming that you have the idea of Java because it is a part of Java. Okay, so I'm assuming that you understand what is HTML, hypertext markup language, what is XML, right? So here we also I'm also assuming that you have the understanding of what is JSON, what is so JSON is way I will say to transfer the data from client to server or server to client. Similarly, we have XML as well. So you can transfer the data from client to server or server to client in two ways. One is the JSON, another one is the XML. XML. This is the format basically, and I'll show that format as well. I'll give you one example for JSON and XML. So I mean data format. So I can send my data as a JSON format, as an XML format, as an HTML format, and I mean REST assured allows all those formats like JSON, HTML, XML, but SOAP allow doesn't allow JSON or other stuff. It allows only the XML. So this is one more disadvantage of SOAP web service. So let's talk about Pojo first. Uh, then I will talk about couple of more theories. Then I'll go back to the demo that we have. So let's talk about Pojo. I will give a high level introduction of Pojo, why we need those Pojo, and why it is helpful. So uh, we have to understand what is Pojo, and obviously it will have some full form as well. So Pojo stands for plain old Java object. Okay, so Pojo stands for plain old Java object. So it is an ordinary Java object, not bound by any specific restriction. So it is free, independent. Like we have some bounded uh, objects in Java, so it is not bounded. So it is not bounded by any restriction other than forced by the Java language specification. So it doesn't require Java class path at all to be executed. So whatever the Java code we write and whatever the Java code we write, it requires Java class path. But these kind of Pojo classes is not dependent even on those class paths. So these are independent. So these POJOs are used to increase the readability and reusability of the program. So what is why we use and what is the best advantage is it provides the readability and reusability of a program. Okay, and why it is so famous and why people like it, because it is very easy to understand and it is very easy to write or implement. Okay, and it was obviously Java was developed by Sun Microsystem, so it was also developed by Sun Microsystem. Now it is being maintained by Oracle. So we have to understand a couple of things if we are talking about Pojo. So a Pojo should not have uh, public class. In general term, we can say extend prescribed classes. It should not have. So it should not have public class. Uh, it should not have public class bar implemented like entry beams and other stuff. It should not contains the public classes. So we consider Pojo as a uh, entity. Like in your program, you have employee class or something like that. So yeah, so this is what Pojo is. Pojo is kind of, uh, I would say, Java object. Like we have the object classes in Java, right? So Pojo class is also that is, but it is independent to the things like it is not bounded by uh, class path. So it is easy to understand. It is easy to use. So that's why it is very famous. Readability is good. You can do reusability, and that's why it is very famous. So we have the idea now what is Pojo and why we need Pojo. And these Pojos are used to convert. Uh, these Pojos are used to do the conversion. I mean, you can convert your JSON to Pojo, Pojo to JSON. You can convert the XML to Pojo and Pojo to XML. So I'll give you one example where you can understand why it is so important and why do we need that during our demo session. So I mean, I'm just trying to tell you so that you have the idea that what is Pojo and why we need that Pojo. We'll see the uh, those things in our demo. Then I mean, we have libraries like there is one very famous library and which is used for assertions. Okay, and that is ham crest library. So this library can be used for assertions. Assertions means, for example, we have to validate that whatever the response we are getting, uh, it is as per expected. For example, it should have 200 and body should have some value, or some header should have some value. So obviously we need validations, and those validation can be achieved using the some assertions. So we can have this library which is called Hamcrest libraries, but honestly this library is not being used since we have testng or JUnit. So even testng provides a number of assertions that we can use. So I mean testng has number of inbuilt uh, assert functions that we can use. So people don't, I mean, if you are using testng and you already having the libraries and other stuff, so why you will install another library to for the assertions only? And testng is very famous, very easy, and it is very uh, I mean it is very famous, so people don't use this library. But yes, if you need additional assertions and you think like those assertions are not enough, so then you can obviously use these libraries that is called Hamcrest libraries. I mean, initially it was very famous, but over the period of time, when these unit testing framework enhanced like testng and JUnit and they provides everything, then people don't use these kind of libraries. Okay, so if you'll guys say, then I can give you example. Otherwise, I'll try to achieve whatever the validation we are doing, we can achieve with the testng itself. Okay, so how an API automation frameworks look like? So we're gonna talk about that as well. So we have to understand, guys, this is not something that, so if someone says that I have to develop API framework, it means that it is not something that you can develop in a day. It is a collective uh, effort for from a team for a project to develop a kind of framework for your project, right? So generally, I mean, it depends what kind of approach you adopt to do the stuff. I mean, if you are using Cucumber, obviously you will not follow this structure, and you will have the Cucumber structure where you have the runner file, you will have the step definition file, you will have the your user stories like in form of given, when, and then, right? So you're gonna follow that structure. If you are using obviously uh, some other framework like some other approach, you're gonna have other as well. But typically a framework should look like this, and it should have all these features here uh, in same ways. So this is what we have, and I'll show you a couple of framework as well where you can see exact how it is being developed. So typical framework look like this. We have resources folder, we have src folder, then we have pom folder. So in pom is something kind of file, xml file, which is part of your maven project. So in this pom you will have all those dependencies. For example, for dependency for rest assured, dependency for testng, dependency for a report that you use. uh, I mean, if you are using only default reporting like testng, then you don't need. If you are using extend report, you can use those dependencies. If here you can see that lao report, you can use that dependency. Some other things like if you have to interact with XML file, then you have to Apache POI library. So those dependency can be added. Whatever the jar is required, you can use those dependencies here. Then in resources folder, resources means you can put your test data in form of CSV, XML, or Excel. Then you can have configuration file where you put the endpoint, okay, endpoint, or you put the environment details. Then you can have the configuration file, and that configuration can be either .property file, .xml file, or any kind of file you can have, and the src will have your code. So in src you will have main or test. In test you will have actual test cases, and those test cases will be calling some other files or pages, sorry, files which has uh, constant, utilities, helper, model, endpoint, and other stuff, and those generic method you can use in your uh, stuff here. So this is a typical API framework look like, and when you are working for a project and you get the opportunity to create that framework, you have to create something like that. And this is again not a one day activity that you will do for your project. It is something that is uh, the collective activity for your project, and it takes time to develop a good framework. But it should have, any framework should have few things like it should be easy to understand whatever the framework you develop, easy to maintain. Obviously you are working for a company or project, tomorrow will you will not be there, right? So someone will come, and it should be developed in such a way that he can understand that framework by reading some document or readme file. So it should be easy to understand, easy to uh, enhanced. Obviously for the period of time you have to do number of enhancement, so it should be enhanced, easy to enhanced, uh, easy to maintain. If you have to modify some of the test cases, you have to descope some of the test cases, add new test cases, so it should be capable to do the stuff. So this is what the framework, standard framework look like. uh, I mean, it depends on the requirement as well, how you create the framework, how you choose the framework. Suppose you create the framework for the people or person who are not very technical, right? You want to just create a framework for them, and you just want to give and say that, hey, you have to do this stuff and just write your test cases, right? So you can adopt any kind of framework, like you can adopt keyword driven framework, which is for non-technical people. But if you think that that engineers will be working, technical team will be working, so you can do hybrid kind of framework. It depends, like what tools you are using, what technology you are using. So but ideal framework should have all those features, like the test data should be separated, uh, configuration file should be separated, utilities, generic functions, constant, endpoint, URL should have in separate file. That's why it is easy to understand, it is easy to maintain. And then test cases, your obviously your test cases should be in separate files. All right, so this is what we have, standard framework for API. As I told you guys, we're gonna talk about the unit testing framework, which is TestNG as well. So obviously, we're gonna use feature of TestNG. So for Java, we have two unit testing framework available, which is one is JUnit, another one is TestNG. Why we have chosen TestNG, that is another discussion over the JUnit. Obviously, TestNG will have some advantages over JUnit, so that's why we have chosen. So we're gonna use the feature of TestNG and what are the best feature that it has. Annotations available. You can use those annotations. I mean, uh, predefined. You can say uh, group of predefined uh, annotations like before suit, after suit, before test, after test, and test. And it has their own role. Like they have their own uh, order of execution. So yeah, so if you are aware about TestNG, or if you're not aware about TestNG and you will learn the TestNG, then you can understand that it has number of annotations available, and those annotations are predefined, and you can use them not only in this uh, rest assured that you can use in Selenium, you can use in other tool which is based on Java. So these annotation we're going to talk about as well. We're going to talk about the reporting as well for the TestNG. So if I move to the next slide, we'll talk about the Swagger as well. So I mean, why we need Swagger and other stuff is again a point of discussion. Obviously, if we have the XML format or JSON format, which is very complex to understand, which is not very organized, I would say. I mean, for me, if I get a file which has or API file which has the request, which has all the definitions, operations, methods, so it is not very easy to understand for me. So I need something that can organize me or uh, put the things in such a way that I can understand. Hey, this is the get request, this is the post request, this is the operation, this is the part of this web services. So I'll give you one example of that as well. And this Swagger help us to do those stuff. So this provides us a pretty format, for the complex files that we have. So I mean, and what are those complex files we have? Obviously, whatever the request files we have, whatever the response we get, so those are very complex to understand. For that, we have Swagger. Some people don't use Swagger. There are multiple options available uh, in market. You can use those things today, uh, which are similar to this Swagger. But Swagger is again something which is developed by the same company which has developed SOAP UI tool. So they have developed this as well. And I mean, the company name is Smart Beer. So Smart Beer has developed a SOAP UI automation tool, and they have developed this Swagger as well. So basically what Swagger provides, it provides number of features for API. So it helps us to understand the API documentation, design, development, and other stuff. So if I say Swagger, Swagger has multiple, it includes multiple tools. Swagger has multiple tools. And what are the tools? It provides the editor. So basically, this editors, you can edit or open the API specification in YAML format and in other format. So it is very easy to, it will give you a readable view. You can understand very easily. Then it has Swagger UI as well. So in Swagger UI, it is again a tool that can help to, uh, I mean, obviously it is a collection of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it can differentiate that this is the HTML, this is the CSS, this is the JavaScript. Again, we have
I'll sorry to interrupt, but we are already late by 4 minutes. So if you can wrap up very soon, so that will be good, so that we can move to the QA round. We are already late by 4 minutes.
so the invite that I got is from 7 to 10. Is it?
So it's no, it's from 7 to 9, so 7:30 to 9. So it will be great if we can wrap up.
Okay, so I
Like
was in intention that it is 7 to 10, so I was into that wish. Okay,
no, no.
all
You
right.
can continue and like you can wrap up the topics soon. Then we can move to the QA round.
So it is so like at 9:30, is it?
It's 9, so we are already late by 5 minutes.
Okay, okay. All right, so I'll just skip these theory portion. Maybe then we can quickly move to the demo part. Then we can move to the Q&A. Okay. All right. Let me stop sharing my screen. So I think I have covered everything. So Swagger is basically a kind of tool developed by SmartBear to do your stuff. So I mean, you can see the documentation and the other stuff on the Swagger, and it has collection of tools. For an automation testing point of view, like API testing point of view, what you need is Swagger editor. So whatever you are seeing on the screen is the Swagger editor that help you to read the document, complex document that you get from developer as part of your API documentation, and from here you can extract your information. What is the operation you have? What are the parameter you have? Other stuff. So this is what we have Swagger. Now I'll just a demo part. So I'll quickly share my screen here. So what we need for rest assured, we need basically Java in my machine. So we have to install the uh, Java and rest assured support. I think Java 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 17, all the versions. So I have the latest version, which is 17 in my machine. So you have to install the JDK, and after JDK you have to install any editor, uh, either Eclipse or IntelliJ. So I have Eclipse on my machine. Then you have to install Maven on your machine. As I told you, Maven is a project management tool or jar management tool, I would say. So you can install Maven from Eclipse Marketplace as well. So uh, if you go to help, and here you can say Eclipse Marketplace, you can install the Maven. By default, with the latest version of Eclipse, it is coming by default. So what you have to do is you have to create a Maven project from here. So you have to go file, you have to say new, and you have to say Maven project. So if you don't see the Maven project here, you have to come here other, and you have to see in this Maven, you see the Maven project. So if you click here, you can say next. Here you can say either you can skip the it will select by default. I would suggest you can just choose by yourself. So you can choose org dot uh, apache dot quick start. So you can select the quick start and you can finish here. So once you finish, I mean, it will take some time. If you see here, it is trying to retrieve those archetype. So once you select here, you can click finish. Once you finish, you will get so here you can see that. So you have to find org.apache and you have to select that one, org.apache, and you can find that quick start. Okay. So here you can see org.apache.common.quickstart. So let me share in such a way like quick start. So you can select this one, or you can select any quick start, whatever you want. You can select. I will suggest org.apache. You can select from org.apache. Okay. So here org.apache. So this is what you have to select. You have to select org Apache Maven archetype, and you can say next, and it will be finished. So once you will do next, it will ask you the group ID, which is your package name, and artifact ID, which is your project name. So you can give project name, group name, whatever you want to say. I will say, for example, I will give one. Similarly, I will give one, and you can do finish. Once you do finish, you can see that a project is being created here. It will take time to download some dependency and other stuff. So dependencies. So as we are running out of time, so I will not do those stuff. I'll just quickly show you one project that I have already here. So here I have created. Now what you need to add those dependencies into your application. So here like getting these dependencies. So there is a repository called Maven Maven repository. So here Maven repo. Hold on, Maven. So this is the repository from where I'm getting these. So here I need for rest assured, so I can search rest assured. Here I can search and I can find. Hold on, not like this. Rest assured. So I need the dependency for rest assured. So if you click here, so you can see this is the latest version. If you click here, you can find that dependency. So what I did, I have copied here. So you can see these dependencies for rest assured. I have 5.11. Then I have testng, which is 7.61. Then I have some other dependencies like JSON sampler, POI, Apache POI, then Apache PIO XMI. Then I have added those dependencies. I have JUnit as well, so you can add those dependencies as well. These are will be required. So these are the jar that I'm using here. Now you have Maven project created, so you can add whatever the code you want to add into your SRC test and Java. So here, uh, what I can say, I can give you one example. So this is what one web service I have. So there's a one web service which is for uh, books, and I can insert the book, I can get the book, and I can do the stuff. So this is what pure Java I have. So this is in pure Java. So I have created one class, for example, basic get here, and I have used one annotation which is called @test. This annotation is from testng. I can use another annotation as well, like before test, right? And it will be executed function public void before test. For example, I'm giving the name, so I can use that as well. So you have to import that annotation from testng. So you can say before method. I can use before method as well. That's okay. You can use before method. So you can say SYSO. I'm just doing for printing purpose. So you can say Control S, and you can put here hello other stuff, right? So this will always be executed before this test annotation. Okay. Now, uh, so this is one class. rest assured, and it is coming from the jar. It is part of jar, and this class has this constant, and we can give this uh, parameter here. So it will specify the URL for your web service. Okay. Now this is again a class, a REST specification class, and this class we can create the object, and there is a function called given. So it will hold that request, and then what kind of request we are we are making get. So if we are passing some parameter as well, you can pass here, but here I'm not passing any parameter. We can hold response in a variable, and which is coming from get status line, and we can pass this response as well. So this is very plain Java programming, and these classes and these methods and these interface abstract classes, these are already part of your uh, library, which is added into your dependency. So if you see that here, you can see number of jars are added as part of your Maven, and this is your rest assured, right? And if you just scroll this rest assured, you can find these are the some packages which is for assertions. So these packages have number of classes. See, these are the classes, response dot class, and this class has number of methods. See, this is this is one interface, it has this interface, it has. So these are having some interface, these are having some classes, methods, and that those methods we are using here. So we don't need to do anything, we only need to use those methods available. To hold the data we need some stuff, so we can do those stuff here. So it we can run it as a normal Java program. Because I'm using testng, so I have to run as a testng. If I have not used annotations here, I could run as a testng. So see, first hello got printed because it is defined that, I mean, it will be executed first, then this test got executed. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the response. So this is what I'm getting. I'm getting 200, which is okay. Then I'm getting these details, like these are the books that we have uh, available. So we can get all these response. So I'm getting this response, book response here. You can see, and it is got passed. Similarly, I can, this is my get request. I can run my put post and all those requests from my from this only. So I have created couple of put request as well. If you see that, I here is the one uh, put request, and I can insert the uh, I can insert the data into account. So I have given the example of registration, right? So I have an account, I can insert username, password, and other stuff as well. I can do the validations as well. If you see that, here is some validation. I'm doing validation in a status code. So if you see that, whatever the response I'm getting, I'm doing validation if it is returning 200 or not. So here I'm saying I'm using assert dot assert equals. So I told you that this is coming from testng. So this class is present in testng, and this class has this method assert equals. So these are the classes available in testng, and we can use uh, so if you see that, you can just write assert dot. If you see that, these are the available assert equal assert equals assert equals. So these are the number of assertions assert functions are available you can use. So it has 100 functions, and that is more than enough. You don't need any external library to do the stuff. So this is what we have. So we can use those assertions. I'm here, what I'm doing, I'm just validating that if it is returning 200 or not. So it is returning 200, obviously. That's why it will passing. If I expect that it should return, for example, 400 or 501, so it will throw that it is got failed because of that. So this is what the demo I have. Sorry guys, we are running. I was having intention that we have to go till 10. That's why I was running into that pace. So this is what we have, and we need Java as a programming to learn this automation. That's it. And if you guys have the idea of Java, you can learn the you can do this automation. If you don't have, as part of our practice, we do provide the training. So we start with very basic, I would say zero, where we're gonna talk about what is Java. Then we'll talk about the OOPS concept, basic concept, basic Java, and other stuff. So why should you guys have to uh, consider us? Because we are the expert in our fields. We are actual working professionals in different organizations. We have a very rich experience of handling multiple clients and projects. We know the real world's problem, so we do a lot of practicals, we do a lot of practical workshop we have. And we are not running a huge batch. Like in our batch we have 5, 10, 15, 20 people only. We don't have a huge batch, we have small batches. And as I told you, we are the industry expert, so we will tell you the real scenario, real problem, real situation that we usually face during our work. And obviously we are not going to talk about, as I told you, like we have number of libraries available for assertions, but I will talk about those libraries which are being used most in the industry, right? So I'll talk about the latest thing, whatever the latest we have, the technology and tools. That's why you guys have to consider me. So I'll pause here for the question and answer. So uh, you guys can ask your question.
Thank you, Azaz, for the wonderful session. So, guys, I'm unmuting. You can unmute yourself and ask the question for anything. So, and just one more thing to add. So, every month we are conducting such webinars. So, you can follow us on the LinkedIn and Facebook to get the updates for the latest webinar. So, now you can unmute yourself one by one and ask the query that you have any. Yes, Yatharth, you can ask, unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, thanks very much. Uh, my question is regarding the HTTP request. As we understand that post request is for create and put request when we are not providing any identifier, then it will create also. May I know why we are using post and put differently if we don't have any identifier? Thank you.
See, uh, thanks for the question, Nithar. So once anything is developed, it has been considered that you know any situation can come across. So during the development of these methods, they have considered all those situations that we might have the identifier, we might not have the identifier, we might have the situation where a user can just do the update, right? And we might have the situation where user don't know if I have to update or insert only, right? So the developer of these methods of HTTP methods have considered all those situations. That's why they have provided those methods. Even other than that, these methods, we have number of other methods available. Even those methods are not being used. If I just show you my screen, if you see that here you can see get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head, option, link. If you see that in Postman, these are also available, those options. And most of the time we don't use those options, but yes, every tool or every technology must have all those features that can be even 1% or 0%, 0.5% required to do the stuff. That's why they have provided all those stuff. Hope I have answered your question.
Yes. So can we understand by that if we don't have any identifier and if we have to create some request, I mean, if we have to create some data, then we can use put command as normal, right? Instead of post command, we can do that.
Yeah, you can do that. Definitely you can do that. uh, uh, but again, I mean, I will suggest not to use post. Use always put. If your requirement is, uh, if your requirement is that if that that data is all that data is already available and you have to do update. If the similar data is not available and you have to do the insert, right? So purpose is different. So always use put. even I always prefer put because I don't need duplicates. If you will use post, it will always have the duplicate. So yeah, you can use put only.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Ravi, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, thank you for taking time to speak with us today. But I was wondering, what are the possible mistakes that a new guy who is into testing would probably make, and what can we correct from those things?
Ravi, I'm not uh, properly able to understand your question. Maybe you can ask one more time, a bit louder. That will be great. Can you hear me, Ravi?
Yeah, I was wondering what are the possible mistakes that one can do who is new to this API testing, and how do we correct those things? Like you guys were like been here for a while, right? So I thought you know what a fresher can possibly can make mistakes, right? Like I was wondering how can those mistakes can be, or and how can we correct them?
Right. So, very good question, Ravi. Even when I started my career, I will give my example as well. When I started my career, I was having 1.5 year experience. I got a project from scratch, and that was not very big company. That was a small company. They asked me to just develop a framework and do that stuff, right? So the basic mistake that we do is wrong tool selection, and the first mistake we do. The second mistake is the wrong framework adaptation. So what I did, I adopted wrong framework. I was having the idea of application, but I was not having that much of understanding that could what could be the problem. So I adopted the keyword driven framework for my API, and that time that was very fancy. But once we met with the situation, or we need the enhancement or optimization, then that start creating the problem. So I migrated the keyword driven framework to hybrid kind of framework. So one a fresher or unexperienced who started just automation or API testing is generally go with the tool which he or she knows, right? But we should know, we should understand our application first. Based on our application, we have to decide what tool we should adopt, and then in that tool what framework we have to develop. And so these are two common mistakes which I think a fresher can do, and this comes with the experience. You will do the mistakes, then you will learn that this is what we should avoid. Then definitely uh, you will be you can achieve a good automation.
Okay, so guys, anyone having more questions?
Medium steep T regular.
Uh,
How can we use JWT tokens for authentication during Postman?
Gaurav, I didn't get your question. So you are saying you are asking about the report or authentication?
No. For JWT tokens as authorization while doing manual testing for Postman to get the API result. Means, how can we use the JWT tokens?
See, it basically, I'll just tell you the scenario. So when you start API automation, so here is the difference between API and GUI. So for GUI automation, you don't need anything from anyone. You only need application which is up and running. And based on the screen, based on the pages, based on the flow, you can start automating, right? But in API, you have to coordinate a lot with the developers. You need the information because that is something not visible and that is something that is developed by someone. So you need to understand, you need the detailed documentation of your web services. So I mean, in the industry, it is very standard format that once you start your testing, you connect with the developer of those web services. They must have some documentation, and that documentation is very detailed about those web services. What are the operation that web services has? What is the authentication process they are using? What are the keys that they are using? So they provides you everything. So based on that document, whatever the tool you are using, I mean Postman, Karate framework, SOAP UI, Rest Assured, any framework you are using, based on that information, you can achieve that authentication. If it is 3.0, whatever the authentication you are doing, whatever the security that application has, you can do those stuff. So if that is specific to Postman or Rest Assured, that is another point of discussion that we can discuss how we can enable that authentication or we can generate the token or other stuff. But yes, if you are getting proper documentation, I mean, you can achieve very easily.
Thank you.
Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Vijeta, this side I asked. So, actually, I had a query like, suppose we are testing one API and it is giving internal server error or some other error. Okay. So, in most of the interviews, this question is asked that how will you actually debug it? Okay, so when we answer that question, we try to provide each and everything, like we'll provide them the payload which we have used, or all other details, the error message which is coming up. So we'll provide the details, but still the interviewer is not satisfied with this, with that answer. So like I would like to know from like from you, like what exactly we are supposed to answer for this question, because I've experienced it many times, but still apart from this, what all we can do uh, based on their
Yeah,
expectation.
yeah, Vijeta. So thanks for your question. See, I mean, this question does not have a fixed answer, right? So, I mean, if web service is not responding, right? For example, it is throwing any error, either client side or server side, right? If it is not responding, being
Hmm.
an automation tester, what's your role? Your role is to test that web service and find that error, right? Your role is to find the issue, not fix the issue. First thing you have to make sure.
Right.
If it is not working, that's not your problem. It's the problem who is the owner, who is the developer of that web service, right? But being an API tester or automation engineer, you have to provide all those evidence, or you have to do first level or second level of troubleshooting, I would say. And these days it is being very fashion in industry that we do the triaging at initial level triaging. For example, there is some issue and we do initial level triaging. And that triaging, how you can do? Obviously, you will have those information about web service. For example, I have one web service and that web service is responding me some data, some information, right? I'm getting as a response. Since yesterday I was getting that, today I'm getting some error, client server or client side or server side error. It is very obvious that if it is working yesterday and it is not working today, it means that there is some issue with the service. It might be some configuration issue, some endpoints has been changed, right? Some server is down. It might be possible server is down. There is some security issue that it is not able to communicate. There is some firewall issues that it is not able to bypass the information. There might be some issues. So what you have to do and what you have to answer is, I will do initial level triage. And how I will do initial level triage, I'll do based on my understanding of that web service. Okay, so you will get the, and obviously you will have the endpoints, right? So based on that endpoints, you will try on different networks. It might be possible that your firewall is blocking. It might be possible that there is some restriction, some that is blocking that web service on your machine. So you will try on some other machines. It might be possible. Plus, you will do. It might be possible there is some authentication and that has been changed. Now you are using old authentication and that is not right. So you will make sure that those authentication is correct, the way you are accessing that web service is right. So you have to tell the answer in that way, and you will, based on your understanding, you will do initial level triage, and you will share your findings that, hey, I tried this and I tried. Even developer is going to do that, right? They will do the initial triage and they will try here and there, then they will see if why this web. It might be possible that the host is itself down where you have the web service, right? If the host is down, server is down, nothing can be happen, right? It might be possible host is up, service is responding, but the receiving end, the client, is not able to handshake or it is not able to connect. So it might be possible. So these analysis you're gonna share, and based on these analysis, it will, I mean, these analysis will help the developer to understand if he or she has to do further uh, investigation or troubleshooting. They have to do. It's not your role. You can just share your initial analysis. So straightforward, you have to tell that my role is to find the issue, not the fix the issue. I can find the issue and I can probably try out something. I can share initial analysis, whatever the understanding I have. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Uh, Anyone having
How
more
do
questions?
I?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
there's a hand. So, a question here, please. So, how would I incorporate performance testing in this framework?
Very good question. So nowadays, we have a single framework which can do GUI, API, and performance. So, I mean, every performance tool has, you know, uh, the testing of GUI and web services, whatever they are having. So in rest assured, I mean, honestly, you cannot, I mean, especially for this rest assured library, you cannot do those stuff, but we have other frameworks available which can, you can do GUI, API, and those stuff. So I got a chance to work one of the framework where we have uh, JMeter. So we have JMeter scripts, we have Selenium scripts, and we were testing those web services as well. So I mean, you can not use this rest assured. This is for pure API testing automation. But if you want to achieve something that can do uh, API testing, GUI testing, and performance, definitely we have open source tools and we can create a framework, enhance that open source. So you can enhance that JMeter and you can achieve that. That is definitely possible. Other than JMeter, you have some other tools as well. I mean, that can achieve that. I mean, you can use Playwright with for API GUI, and you can integrate K6. That is again performance tool, and that use JavaScript. So K6, Playwright, all together you can do the stuff. You can do Karate, that is again Java based. So you can integrate Karate for GUI API. Karate can integrate with Selenium for GUI, and you can use JMeter integration into that. So you have to do the integration basically to achieve that.
Thank you.
Any more question, guys? Anyone having? Okay, so let's conclude the meeting. So we are already late.